You?
Hey Fox, look at me, man. My daddy's the whole dag hunter.
A little while ago, I tweeted that I had just watched the worst film I've ever seen. What is that film, you might ask, if you haven't already checked the title above the video? No! No! No, no, no! No! Don't ever do that again. It is the cleverly titled Backwoods Bloodbath. See? The pun is in woods. Clever. It's a film that won the Best Horror Feature at the New York Independent Film Festival, so you know it's going to be good. What? I'm not taking a shot at anybody. It's your own overactive imagination. Anyway, before I get on to that, there are some people out there right now who are probably wondering what has happened to Bond Month. At least you would be thinking that if you followed me on Twitter. For those of you who don't know, I've been asked to produce the Mike J horror comedy pen film NerdQuest. It's a horror film that's going to feature a lot of the UK channel awesome talent. But in undertaking the role, I had no idea how much work was involved with the role. Because you see, this is the script for NerdQuest. And notes and general ideas, rough ideas for posters, etc. These are my notes for my James Bond month. Not as thick, but you can clearly see here they are. A bit of writing there as well. Quite simply, it is impossible for me right now to devote the time and attention I want to Bond month. It's something I want to do right and something I want to do well. I don't want to release it if I don't think it's right. And that goes for the Soul retrospective as well. That doesn't mean I'm not going to do them. Both are still coming. I've already put together a number of the videos, but I won't release them unless I'm 100% happy with them, and right now, I'm not. So I'm going to delay both of them for a while, but I stress, they are both still coming, with the Soul retrospective now immediately following the conclusion of Bond Month. So if you want to blame someone for there being no Bond Month at this time, blame this guy because I do too. Now the reason I mention NerdQuest, which begins filming in June of this year by the way, 2012, is we're not kidding ourselves. We are amateurs, and some of us can barely act to save our lives, others, me included, cannot act to save their lives. I'm perfectly fine admitting that. But, with all these factors working against us, no matter what, there is no way in hell that NerdQuest is going to be worse than this. I know I don't usually look at the bad films, but as this film was recommended to me and I paid a good £7 to purchase it, I felt it deserved to be talked about. Oh dear God, does it deserve to be talked about. You see, my thinking behind it is it's an attempt at a comedy horror, an attempt at a tongue-in-cheek horror, a throwback to the horror slashers of the 1970s and 80s. Those films, when you take the nostalgia goggles off, weren't all that great. It's just the legacy they've left behind that leaves the impact, and those films had the luxury of being filmed at a simpler time, in a simpler place. So surely, it's possible for me to look at this film in the same light. Yes, it is, and I still don't like it. The film opens with Vince and an unnamed girl who I'll just call Girl who's way out of his league, and there is no way in hell she would ever be with him if this was real life. Or, I don't know, Barn Girl, considering that's what she's called in the credits. Meeting up in a mill in the middle of the woods for some of that crazy horror sex that usually spells death for the persons involved. And I question the logistics of this relationship due to the conversation they have right from the off.
What do you think?
I'm thinking, what are we doing up here in your dad's mill?
If you need to clarify exactly what happened, his very attractive, half-naked girlfriend asked him for a compliment, and he questioned their current location. I can see this relationship wasn't founded on strength of personality. You would think he might have questioned this on the way to the mill, or maybe when she was outside taking her clothes off. But no, he felt the perfect time to ask about their location was when she was standing in front of him, wearing basically nothing. Okay, do you see why I find it so hard to buy into this relationship? Also, get used to the audio mix from the film because this isn't the first time bad dubbing and loud music will play a factor. Vince, despite having an attractive half-naked girl draped over his body, is distracted by a strange smell and a noise from up above, which is enough for him to disentangle himself from Barn Girl and scale a ladder to investigate. With no answer from Vince, Barn Girl follows him up, and I'm assuming the direction she was given here was to wiggle her ass as much as possible. call it a hunch. And her fate is that of Vince's, and she dies, indicated by the blood, which then for some reason turns into syrup, and neither of these characters are spoken of again. As openings go, I'll admit I've seen worse.
I killed my grandmother.
Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Critic.
So compared to those, this opening isn't bad, and every horror film needs a good opening or a hook to draw in its audience. It leaves an air of mystery as to what exactly was up there, leaving the question of whether it was a man or a beast. The biggest problem I had with the opening, acting aside, is the music, which plays so loudly that it makes it very hard to hear what the actors are actually saying, which is even more of a puzzle when you consider that a lot of that scene was dubbed. And believe me, this isn't the only time I'm going to call attention to this. After a short title sequence and a little montage, we're introduced to our team of horror heroes, or in this case, standard horror stereotypes. Mark, who likes taking photos, doesn't really talk to anyone, and doesn't like joining in. Good girl Jess, a longtime friend of Mark's, with thoughts of more than friendship on her mind. Becky, the token slut, but she's a redhead, so I'm perfectly okay with that, and I'm already pulling for her survival. Cooper, whose sole purpose of the film is to get drunk, so naturally I want him to survive too. Bisexual Paul, the token black guy of the group, and Jess's ex-boyfriend, Rafa Nadal, also known as Brent, who cheated on Jess with Becky, and is the stereotypical jock. So in horror conventions, with all that baggage, this is the perfect group to go away together.
Hey, did she mention, two chicks?
I know it's weird to see a college student still carrying that jock mentality, but I've known people in their 40s who still have that kind of attitude, so this actually makes Brent the most believable character of the bunch for me. And having every horror cliche covered, I'm actually amazed at the restraint shown in not putting Mark in glasses, seeing he is clearly the token nerd of the group. Excellent restraint movie. Trust me, when we get the Turtles from Space reboot, just to show Donatello is the smart one, you'll see him wearing glasses all the time. Trust me. The story follows a group of college graduates who went to high school together, coming together after the death of a mutual friend, called Eric, and are taking a weekend away in a cabin in the woods to get drunk, high, and mourn his loss. As horror films go, it is cliche, but then that is the film's MO. On their way to the cabin, the group duck into a convenience store where loud, annoying music, which I think is supposed to be a play on country music, makes it very hard to hear what they're actually saying to each other.
Is that how you're getting his boobs in toilet paper?
And the locals paint themselves as quite the stereotypical odd bunch when Cooper talks to an old guy and the old guy... Let me play that again. Cooper is holding the toilet roll. The old man takes it. Cooper questions it. Okay, let's just say these people are extravagant. It's, nicer than saying they're nuts. Even though they clearly are. The store owner lets them know that he doesn't like them, quite politely actually, and that they're basically driving to their deaths, with subtlety being the key to his delivery and performance here.
That's on the house, and they go in hell of a last night.
Well, I guess you could call it that if you actually understood what he was saying, and this is a big problem I have with the film. I'm fine with it going for the tongue-in-cheek vibe. I'm fine with it trying to pass itself off as a comedy, but it would help if the actors were mic'd because the damn music makes it very hard to hear them. The cast are a clear bunch of stereotypes and the setup is a horror standard for this type of film, and it's following the blueprint to the letter. But even in those old 70s and 80s films, you could still actually understand what was being said. After some more driving, which is padded with yet another short music sequence, the group arrive at the cabin where they meet the cabin owner, Brick.
Dick?
College graduates, ladies and gentlemen. And Brick has one rule.
Don't drink my fucking syrup.
He sounds like a young Mr. Plinkett.
What's wrong with your face?
Brick leaves and is never seen again, which makes this scene totally pointless from a character standpoint, with his purpose only being to inform the cast that cell phones don't work, but they do have a landline, but that information could easily have been passed over to them just by leaving a note. It didn't need to introduce a new character for this, and it's a new character that adds nothing to the film. After spending the afternoon settling in that night, the group head to the local bar where Mark apparently doesn't want to drink, but a minute later he's shown drinking. So it's nice to see the movie maintain a form of consistency. A couple of local guys called Duke and Doug drop in and start harassing a character we don't know yet, and the first hints at the film's main antagonist are actually revealed.
My daddy's the whole day hunter.
Now, forewarning, prepare yourself for some grade A acting.
Hey everybody, they just found Dick Freeman's truck flipped over on Highway 8.
Who the hell's Dick Freeman? Harassed guy, named Scott, now reveals a little of the history of the woods and more importantly, the beast that stalks them, the Hodag, all revealed in flashback red for some reason, which details his father's history of hunting a beast which eventually killed him. Now at this point, I kind of felt the film was going for this Jeepers Creepers vibe in talking about the villain instead of actually showing it, which works, because I think the majority would agree that when they finally did show the creeper, that's when things went downhill. In this case, I question the film in terms of its story right from this point because the locals all drop hints that this thing has been hunting the woods for a very long time, which begs the question, why would you set up a bar near a surefire death trap? And why has it never killed the people who live near the woods? The characters all comment on the hunting season, but yet they've never been killed by this thing. Yeah, the argument could be made that this is a tongue-in-cheek sort of comedy, but it needs to have some form of sense because it's not a spoof or a parody. As the group leave, they encounter two drunk guys, who don't get names, so I'll just call them Bill and Ted. Apparently it's possible in this universe to get drunk and wasted while drinking nothing but milk. If that's true, that does actually explain a lot about my life, as I do drink an awful lot of milk. The Hodag puts in his first real appearance of the film and kills Ted, whose screams are heard back at the cabin where the girls discover the landline is now dead.
Phone's dead.
Wow, she really seems concerned. Anyway, as far as horror conventions go, we have the slut, the jock, the black man, the outcast, the party animal, the good girl. No cell phone signal, no telephone line, and pull in a bra? I can't talk. And now for a quick message. Are you one of those people who are prone to total freakouts when someone says something like Michael Bay's Transformer films or the Star Wars prequels were total shit? Then you don't want to watch The Nostalgia Critic.
Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Critic. I remember it so you don't have to.
The Nostalgia Critic. Watch a 30-year-old man with a rapidly receding hairline talk about old films and shows while he screams and yells a lot. Over. And over.
Is nobody thinking about the dad?
And over. All in the name of comedy. Only available on That Guy with the Glasses, Springboard, and YouTube. I would say he's on Blip, but we all know Blip are absolutely shit. The Nostalgia Critic. He says the things he says so you don't take them seriously. Because only a complete idiot would take what this man says seriously. And now back to our regular scheduled programming. With the disturbance over and the girls not informing the guys that the line is dead, the film shows all the characters going to bed, which is obviously very important, and Becky and Paul have sex, I think. Well, they squirt each other with syrup, which I assume is a metaphor, and they're still clothed, so it's obviously a very messy metaphor. The next morning, we get another music montage showing the characters getting up, washing, showering, and then we meet a girl we've never seen before camping in the woods. We see her wake up, we see her stretching, and then we see her dead and tied to a tree. I remind you that this thing has been killing for a very long time and usually eats its victims. So what does bloodying a character we've never seen before and then tying that same character to a tree for all to see in broad daylight accomplish? Absolutely nothing. We don't know this character, we have no investment in this character, and the main cast didn't even meet this character, which makes the death completely pointless and adds nothing really to the story. It just shows the Hodag killing, but they've already showed the Hodag killing. What more do you need from that? But it does allow me a brief segue into something I want to talk about just briefly. And if anybody out there can enlighten me on this, please do. Tell me, who the hell is that? And who the hell is that? I mean, she could be Becky, but the hair doesn't match, and we never see Becky dressed like this or in this position, so it must be this character, just clothed and with her hair down. So why is she on the DVD cover? Back to the film. Get ready for some more grade A acting, as Brent discovers his tires have been slashed. Naturally, he blames Mark.
What are you talking about?
My fucking tires are slashed to shit.
It's almost like he forgot his line.
Brent, let him go.
Jesus Christ, I know I sound boring half the time, but even I can emote better than her. Still, it's a good thing they have their priorities sorted.
If there's no car, that means we can't buy any fucking beer.
I like Cooper. The group, now with no car and no phone, decide to go for help or just go for a walk, with Brent and Paul going off in one direction, Becky and Cooper staying at the cabin, and Mark and Jess going off in another, getting a chance to bond with what has to be some of the most awkwardly stilted dialogue and delivery I've ever heard.
All the time.
Really?
Yeah, I can see you from my window pretty much every night. I especially like that little pink leopard thing you had.
Oh my god.
So he's basically admitting to watching her change from his window. and she thinks this is cute. Does it work that way in real life too?
Oh my god. You fucking bastard. What are you smiling at? Stop it. What the fuck?
Yeah, I guess not. Elsewhere in the wood, Doug and Duke sit out and have a sing-song, which leads to another musical number. You know what? I'm actually going to start a musical montage counter as we see the Hodag casually murdering even more people we'd never seen before. Okay, it appears these woods are just full of people and they're all getting killed by this thing, and no one has ever called in the army to sweep the location to take this thing down. I mean, people know of it, so there must have been survivors, so why have they not alerted a higher authority? We've already had 5 deaths on screen, and a few of those characters are local to the area. Do they not have families, or they're just like the Misfits review coming soon, and never seem to have any interaction with their parents or loved ones? Brent and Paul find a ladder, which I guess is some kind of self-made watchtower, which Brent climbs, and why does everyone in this movie climb a ladder like they work in a Thigh Master? Back on the ground, Paul falls over the body of a dead deer, screams loudly, which for some reason Brent doesn't seem to hear, and then rolls around in it a few times, and I don't know, here's an idea. Get up! Back to Scott and Doug, local boys remember, who don't believe in the Hodag despite the overwhelming evidence of him not being all that stealthy, talk and then die, which we see in gloriously gory detail. You know, because it's a comedy. Back at the cabin, the group engage in a game of I Never, while Paul gets a music montage as he masturbates to a photo of his boyfriend. I wish I was making that up, but I'm not. And okay, granted, it only lasts a second, but really, what did this sequence add to the movie? Why was it in there? It wasn't funny. We've already established that Paul is bi. We've already established the picture of this man dressed up as a woman. So, it's not funny. So why is it in there? Later, while Mark is in the dark room developing his photos, Becky enters and makes a move on him, but Mark turns her down, noting that she, along with Paul and Brent, made his life a living hell in high school. Yes, when a hot naked woman is throwing herself at you and you're alone with her, that is the perfect time to bring up a problem you might have had with her in high school. A little later, while tending to the barbecue, Brent hears a noise in the woods and heads out to investigate, first finding a severed hand before getting stabbed in the front by the Hodag's Seath and then dragged off into the woods. His scream alerts his friends, and a shot from Scott forces the Hodag to abandon Brent, but not immediately, as he still finds the time to tie up Brent and hang him from a tree. With what must be a painfully deep wound in his chest, the boys do the smart thing and untie him, carry him back to the cabin, and dress his wound? No, they give him alcohol to drink. And we're treated to some more stunning dialogue and stirring delivery.
I found this shoved through his chest.
You gotta be kidding me.
If you close your eyes and wish real hard, you can imagine they care.
If we move him, he might bleed to death.
Which would be sound advice if you hadn't just moved him. Paul and Becky go looking for help and discover another cabin. Becky is freaked out, so naturally Paul takes this opportunity to make a move.
Don't worry. I won't let anything happen to your beautiful body.
A woman feeling vulnerable and a man making a move on her? Surely not! Sadly, I do know a couple of people like this in real life, and I think they're twats. Back at the cabin, Mark and Jess continue to bond, Cooper watches the game, while Brent proceeds to slowly bleed out with no bandage or anything over his wound. Deciding to take some action, Mark leaves for Brick's cabin, in the hope he can get a ride off him for Brent. Why no one thought of this before escapes me. Back to Paul and Becky, Paul smells something, which is revealed to be the Hodag, and being the hero that he is, he leaves Becky alone, only instead of walking back the way he came, he just wanders around and dies. Becky also runs, before she loses her leg, is stabbed through the back, and then she dies too. Back at the cabin, Cooper is still listening to the game, and I know I'm not American, but if a football game starts at 3 in the afternoon, would it still be playing by the time it's dark? His team loses, and, totally distressed, Cooper leaves the cabin and walks out into the woods, which is basically the script's way of saying, we have nothing more for you to do, and a short time later he dies. At another location, a man who had a tiny scene in the bar arrives in the woods, and dies too. And here lies my problem with the film if it's trying to be a comedy. This scene wasn't funny, and wasn't a commentary on any scenes from the films of the 70s or 80s. It was just a pointless scene to add to the body count. It's another character we know nothing about, and a character character that's had nothing to do with our main group. So what was the point of it? It just adds to the runtime, but adds nothing else. Back at the cabin, despite the fear that moving Brent could result in him bleeding to death, Jess and Mark move him anyway, and let him smoke. Well, he's already had a drink, why should a cigarette harm him? And lighting a fire to keep everyone warm, and in front of Brent, who still has a hole in his chest, let me remind you, Mark and Jess kiss, if you can call it that, and then undress and have sex. I hope she's on the pill.
That's cool. Just bang while the Brent's dying.
He has a point. This is also a good lesson in how not to make your character sympathetic and easy to root for. The first thing you don't want them to do is to make out in front of a dying friend and then go off and have sex while that friend is still dying. Call me crazy, but it just takes away any and all ability for me to like them. Also, I know I'm nitpicking, but could these two be any more awkward together? They really have no chemistry and don't even look like they're kissing, more like gently headbutting each other. It's like the actors didn't get on and didn't want to actually kiss. Is it so hard to kiss someone on camera?
Don't date crush lines.
Of course not! Hell, Mark kissed Becky earlier in the film, and that was an actual kiss. I guess you could use the argument that maybe they're playing it as nervous because they're childhood friends, but come on, do you seriously expect me to believe that the movie went for that degree of character development when they spent the majority of this film killing off people we've never seen before? After their very short tryst, Scott arrives and informs them that he can drive them out of the woods, but his truck can only seat 2. So why don't they just have one person ride shotgun and 2 people lie in the back? Because that would make sense? Or maybe it's because they can't move Brent. Well, no, seeing as he's now on his feet in this very scene. You know, he's really not doing too bad for someone who's got a hole in his chest. While in the truck, Jess and Scott talk about the Hodag, which is the film's attempt to give it a backstory. But as it hints that the Hodag has been around since the 1800s, it just further mystifies me why no one would ever have investigated these disappearances. Considering Scott seems to have hunted it for years, as his father did before him, and this thing seems to have a bigger body count than Jason and Michael Myers combined, you'd think he might have actually informed a few people, like, I don't know, the police? Back at the cabin, Brent, on the verge of death, has a moment of self-reflection, apologises to Mark for being an arsehole, and gives his relationship with Jess his blessing. So Mark kills him. Yes, you heard me right. In an attempt to throw in a twist, Mark is also a killer, although he's a killer with no connection to the Hodag storyline. While in a better written film, with fully developed, fleshed out characters, this could have been seen as quite the shock. Here it just comes across as unnecessary and just complicates the film. It'd be like me introducing a side character or a nemesis just for the sake of it.
Do you need me yet?
No, not yet.
Unlimited
Get out.
power.
Back with Jess and Scott, they come face to face with the Hodag. Scott has obviously spent his life building up to this moment, and so plays this ultra smart, and gets out of his vehicle, you know, the vehicle he could have used to run the thing over with, and slowly walks toward the Hodag, firing off his shotgun round after round. Yeah, the first one didn't phase it, so why would the second? Also, why are you walking towards it? This can't end well. And it doesn't, as the Hodag turns the gun on Scott, and he shoots himself through the chest at point-blank range with a shotgun. You'll be fine. I've seen Killjoy too, and I know shotgun blasts to the chest are not immediately fatal. Also, if he's been hunting this thing his whole life, didn't he have a better plan than to walk towards it and shoot it? Wouldn't a safer, less stupid plan have been to just, hit the accelerator, run the thing over, and then, reverse back and forth a couple of times, and then just give it one final reverse to finish the job? Well, that's what I'd do anyway. Back at the cabin, using that subtle form of acting that has become this movie's birthright, Mark goes mad, or has a rave, I'm not sure, and through the power of flashback, we discover he was the one who cut the phone lines, slashed the tyres, killed Eric, and also killed Paul. Now, as pointless as this turn is as far as the story goes, and for all the knocking I've given the film and the character of Mark, I like how they plant the seeds of his problems with Becky, Brent, and Paul very early in the film.
You messed up my childhood enough. I don't have to take your shit for the rest of my life.
The problem is the script is so badly put together and there is just no form of subtlety about the way it's written or how it's delivered. So the revelation really isn't that much of a shock. Jess returns and, discovering Mark's true nature, now is the time for her to finally emote.
I don't even know you.
Just kidding. Mark shoots out the truck tyres, I assume, well, that's what he says anyway, and hands the gun to Jessica. Wow, she looks something, doesn't she? Instead, she hits him with a gun butt and runs off, but not before being kind enough to taunt him and let him know exactly where she is. Now, I know you're probably thinking she's trying to be smart and lead him into a trap. You would be wrong. She finds a barn, or maybe it's the mill from the beginning of the film, I'm not sure, which begs the question, how long has she been running, seeing as no one has been able to stumble across this place through the whole movie? Is it that the barn doesn't appear on their maps, or that, I don't know, maybe the filmmakers just pulled this out of their ass? I'd go with option 2. Inside the barn, she finds a Hodag egg and the bodies of Cooper and Becky. Oh, come on. How is she still alive? She lost her leg and was stabbed through the back, and God knows what he did to cause that chest wound. If the stab wound alone didn't kill her, she should have lost all the blood in her body by now. But it doesn't matter because Mark shows up and kills her anyway. See, Mark had nothing against Jess and Cooper, and that's why he spared them. Which leads to another Oscar moment when Mark realizes what's happened to Cooper.
No!
Gripping. And then the Hodag arrives and kills Mark. Carry on. Jess steals the egg and stumbles across even more bodies, which now ups the body count to at least 10 in this film, and I'm supposed to believe that this thing does this every year and no one investigates it? If this were Raccoon City, they'd have nuked the damn forest by now. Arriving back at the cabin, Jess uses the, for the moment, still alive form of Brent as a human shield, so the Hodag kills him. For real this time, and then puts the egg in the oven. As the Hodag squeezes the life out of her, Scott reappears and shoots it, which knocks it from the cabin onto the floor. See, I told you! Getting shot with a shotgun at point-blank range does not mean instant death. Also, I find it confusing that a shotgun blast at point-blank range didn't phase it, but a blast from the same gun just further away sent it flying through the wall. As Scott breathes his last breath, I guess shotgun blasts do kill, they just kill very slowly, Jess discovers the Hodag has escaped and Scott reveals it never actually dies. Which begs the question, what is the point of hunting it? Scott dies and Jess has a dream, which means nothing, and awakens in a van with two guys whom we've never seen before, and she should just thank her lucky stars she's not in a Rob Zombie film, because if she was, these two would probably have done unspeakable things to her while she was unconscious. And if these two characters didn't at least look down her shirt while she was asleep, then I commend this movie for treating two of its characters like real decent people. Sadly, it's two characters introduced right at the film's conclusion, and the film ends with the obligatory "he's still out there" moment, with a maple syrup dripping crime scene investigator. Because it's not like he has to worry about laying low or anything, and that's Backwoods Bloodbath. It's a film I think was trying to be a low-budget Jeepers Creepers, but suffers from bad performances, awful voice dubbing. Seriously, it's like 90% of this film was dubbed and dubbed terribly, and some really bad editing. There's a sequence early that shows the Hodag lurking, and the editing and cuts during this scene are so bad, I can't believe they were intentional. Watching it again, it's more than obvious that the film was trying to pass itself off as a comedy. There's even a bonus scene right at the end of the credits, which I won't spoil, that confirms it, and maybe I'm just not getting its angle. Maybe I'm completely missing the mark. But for me, the cast just don't have the ability or the subtlety to work the movie and the dialogue that way, and it seems they have no idea how to play it, going for a mix of either hammy over the top or deadpan straight delivery, and it just doesn't mesh. A good example of a film that manages what this film was trying to do would be Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, review coming soon, where the horror setting and the stereotypes are used to the film's advantage, and it's bloody hilarious because of it. I'm not one to encourage unsocial activities or drinking, but maybe if you were drunk as a skunk or high as a kite, this film would be the funniest film we've ever seen. As it stands, I can't advise that type of behaviour because my probation officer will have me thrown back in rehab. So I advise against drinking. Drinking is very, very bad. You must never ever drink. However, if NerdQuest is as bad or worse than this film, I'm making a personal promise now that I will review every single one of the Twilight films without the aid of alcohol. And this is so going to come back and bite me in the arse at a later date.